I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska, and in Minneapolis, as well as the campus of the University of Kansas. This is Gallup's Strengths Spotlight with special guest Robin Stubblefield from the University of Minnesota, recorded on January 13th, 2014. Strengths Spotlights are live interviews that Gallup conducts with individuals, teams, and organizations around the world who are using the Clifton Strengths Finder and its 34 themes to impact their community and organizations by developing people, maximizing their potential, and achieving success. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during this program, we do have a live chat room available. It's right below the main video window. Or if you're listening to the recorded version, you can email those questions to us. Just send that to our coaching account. It's coaching@gallup.com. And don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just Gallup Strengths Center, all one word, .com, for all your Strengths Finder resources and training needs. You can also catch this video. Both streaming and downloadable audio will be available for you offline for this show over at coaching.gallup.com. In this special Strengths Spotlight, we'll take a look at the work that the University of Minnesota is doing in partnership with Gallup to build a strength. We'll have live questions from the University of Kansas and you in chat. I want to introduce to you Shane Lopez. He's an author and psychologist who currently works as a senior scientist for Gallup and as a research director for the Clifton Strengths Institute. He'll be our anchor of our team at KU. Welcome, Shane. Thanks for coming out today.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you so much, and welcome to the University of Kansas. And I have some wonderful folks sitting behind me, and they'll be peppering our guests with questions here in a moment. But I want to welcome our guests from Minnesota. From Minneapolis, our Gallup Minneapolis office. Katie Lyon is representing our team there, and Katie is a consultant for Gallup's education practice. She has a passion for cultivating the strengths of leaders and young people to create more engaged campuses and schools, and she partners with the University of Minnesota, who's represented by Robin Stubblefield right there. She is relator, communication, connectedness, ideation, and restorative. And that's, I guess, all you need to know her inside and out, right? But she's also the Director of Student Engagement and Co-Curricular Learning and Student Affairs at the University of Minnesota. We'll be posting her bio and sharing it with the group here to learn more. But as we are sitting, thanks to Wendy Schumacher, our host, as we're sitting in the Career Center here at the University of Kansas, I do want to share that Robin started in the Career Center, started working with students, promoting their career development. And Robin, on that note, can you tell us a little bit about how you were first introduced to strengths? Was it in the Career Center or was it outside of the Career Center?
It was actually, my initial interaction with Strengths Finder was actually in my own career coaching. I was working with a career coach at a time of some transition in my own life, and I was first introduced to it based on that experience. When I went back into higher education, working with students in career, I decided at that point that I really wanted to dive in a little bit deeper because I thought it would be a really helpful tool to work with student development, career exploration, and career planning. So at that point, I worked it into classes that I taught, as well as my one-to-one appointments with students, and then ultimately I moved to using it with student staff that I supervised.
You know, as often as we've talked about strengths, I didn't know that that's how you were introduced to it, through your own career coaching. And Katie, tell us a little bit about how you first encountered strengths. You kind of grew up in the strengths heartland there in Nebraska. So were you given your strengths code at birth, or how was that? How was it facilitated?
I was not, but I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, where Don Clifton, who's considered, the father of strengths-based psychology, really kind of rules the land, and many people know his name and know of Gallup. And then I was a student when I actually first took the Strengths Finder, so I've gotten to experience it from the lens of a student, and now from the lens of someone who's working with all these very hardworking staff members and faculty members and school leaders who are hoping to do really meaningful work with students. So I've been passionate about it for about 10 years now and haven't stopped.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'd like to hear from both of you about how University of Minnesota has taken advantage of opportunities to make sure that more students have more information about their strengths, more opportunities to learn and grow. Robin, can you kind of start us off with the story about how the University of Minnesota went from where KU is today, where most schools are today across the country, in disseminating codes and kind of a way that makes sense. First, maybe to first-year experience students, then to career center students, then to leadership students. And then at some point, you guys were doing that, and then you decided there was a need for some coordination. Can you tell us about how that unfolded?
Sure, and keep in mind I have communication in my top 5, so I'll try to keep this brief and concise. About 3 years ago, we looked at as a campus to see kind of what the possibility would be to integrate strengths in a larger way and in a more purposeful way. Prior to that, we had been having areas across campus use it in their own pockets and in places use it very effectively in those pockets, but it wasn't giving our entire first-year student population or really the overall campus population sort of a consistent opportunity to. And so 3 years ago, the Vice Provost for Student Affairs at that time brought up the idea of what if we coordinated to have all of our first-year students have the same opportunity to take this. And we explored the possibility of that, and in a pretty quick movement, decided that let's give it a go. We'll put together a 3-year pilot, and that will give all incoming first-year students the opportunity to take strengths prior to coming to our campus in fall for Welcome Week. And then 1 year into the initiative, we also started to wrap in transfer students. So at this point in time, our incoming transfer students also have an opportunity to get a code to take Strengths Finder upon their arrival on our campus as well.
And to what end? So when we talk about why put this opportunity in front of more students, what are the goals of the University of Minnesota? And if you could touch on recruitment and retention and anything in between that, graduating students in 4 years, what goals are you pursuing with Strengths as one tool?
Our overarching goal really is to positively impact student retention, graduation, and student success and well-being. Mm-hmm. And we're using Strengths as one of the kind of foundational ways in which to do that. And so with students being able to come in, we're giving them a place to start with a common language right in that first year experience. It's something that they can all participate in together that gives them a language to start from. Use that language throughout their undergraduate career, not only with fellow students, but with staff, hopefully with faculty as well, as that side of things hopefully continues to grow. And then moving beyond that, it's really getting into what can we do to help retain them. So how does this feed into their sense of belonging on our campus, on how they can get engaged on our campus, how they can be academically successful on our campus, then feeding into things around choosing majors, career exploration, helping them define what are the opportunities that are the best fits for them, that again feeds back into that retention piece, getting engaged, ultimately leading to better graduation, leading them to places that they feel that they can do their best work every day, they can use their talents every day, so that their ultimate well-being is impacted positively as well. And ultimately, we hope to look at that in a long-term perspective, not just for their undergraduate career, but how do the choices that they make in their undergraduate career hopefully contribute to that longer well-being, excuse me, longer well-being for them as well.
And Shane, I would just add to that, I think one of the successes that University of Minnesota has had, and one of the things that we've really worked on them with as a partner, has been a very clear purpose communicated well. So you've got the really passionate people, and once they know exactly what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, they jump on board. So it's allowed them to be more strategic and get really good following, not only from their partners in planning, but also from the students. They've been able to get people really excited by having everyone very, very focused on one common goal, and that's rare.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch that unfold and to hear a room full of people at the University of Minnesota talking about the same thing for the same reason, for the same purpose, the same end goal. Related to that, I want to touch on the student experience and the measurement that goes along with this, Robin, but also the support of leadership. It seems like every fall I get a note that's from one of your school leaders, maybe your president, with their top 5, and here's what I'm doing this year to develop my top 5. Can you tell us about one of those recent letters that have been sent out?
Well, I think we've been very fortunate in that we've had from the top, and President Kaler launches Welcome Week during his convocation. He integrates strengths actively into that convocation speech, so we hear it there. We also do a marketing campaign on campus called 34 and 34, which every week of the academic year we focus on a different talent theme, and then we go to staff and faculty across campus to tell their story about that the talent theme that we're focused on that week. We also have students as a part of that as well, so we'll get a perspective of a student story, and we've also reached out to alumni and employers in our community as well.
And you have some long-term strengths users in the community in terms of employers, right? So
we do. We're lucky. We're in obviously a very urban campus, and so we have some large employers here, and we have some that are more strengths-based. And so we've been able to connect with some of those employers and even bring them to campus to do a panel so that students and staff can hear about how are they implementing it in their organizations.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about, let's get back to students. So the student experience. So if my child chooses to go to the University of Minnesota, and I'm all excited about this strengths thing, how is it different from him going to a different school and just getting his code and never ever hearing about strengths again? So what does he get in terms of touches maybe over the course of his 4 years at the University of Minnesota?
Oh my goodness, this is the question where we could go on for a long time in terms of examples. One of the things I will preface is that setting the stage for the University of Minnesota, we're a highly decentralized campus. And so we have multiple different colleges on campus, and so in that regard, we needed to be very thoughtful around being consistent with giving every student an opportunity to take Strengths Finder. But after that, we wanted some consistent opportunities for them, but we also wanted them to be able to kind of find their way with strengths, as well as provide a lot of autonomy for our departments and colleges to integrate strengths in ways that works with the work that they do with students. So with the 5,500 different first-year students we have coming in every year, they will interact with strengths in a variety of ways. Some of the larger ways that a lot of them will interact with strengths, especially during their first year, is during that welcome week period. We've got multiple touch points for them throughout welcome week, some of them being large group activities that are, when I say large, I mean like 400 students to 700 students. Some of our welcome week leaders are all provided some training in strengths so that they can have smaller group conversations with those students that they're interacting with. Our housing and residential life department is an amazing partner on campus with strengths, and they were one of the areas that were really active in it prior to our formal initiative being organized. And so they have built, now this past year, they just launched a new residential curriculum called Foundations in Success, which is focused on overall well-being for students, with strengths being a key part of that. We have 86% of our students that live in our on-campus housing, so that's a critical touch point for them. Their community advisors are trained, are having conversations with our students at that point. And then beyond that, we've got integrations in our leadership minor, in our career area. We've got it in a lot of the colleges, integrating it into their first year experience courses. We work with student employment supervisors. We also work with our parent program quite a bit to integrate it and give parents an opportunity to interact around it as well. We found that a lot of these conversations that students are having are also initiated by the student with friends and family. So that's been another important audience for us to really work with and partner with. Various classes that are outside the first year experience classes have used it. So I can go on, but I'm going to take a breath.
Robin, can I ask, just in follow-up to your question, Shane, how did you focus in on the right people to partner with, and have you had to say no along the way? So I know your group is like the KU group, full of people who are just passionate and excited about strengths from different areas, but also have big jobs and a lot of responsibilities. So how have you become focused, and what's been your process in doing that?
Well, I think initially we really looked at, who and where are some of the low-hanging fruit on our campus. Part of it has to do with students coming in as first-year students. We needed to be realistic around who are they going to be having touch points with the most during their first year, during their second year, during their third year, during their fourth year. And so it was a matter of who's already an advocate or using strengths on campus that might fall into those groups. And then if there were groups on campus that we thought really could get involved or we wanted to get involved that weren't yet involved, identifying and prioritizing how we needed to do that moving forward. So it couldn't all happen in that first year of our initiative. So who should be focused on the first year, the second year, the third year, et cetera. And we did build a framework around that, which is on our website, and we can refer to that later. But that's kind of the approach that we took.
Right.
And how do those folks, Robin, faculty and staff, and leaders across campus, how do they get trained up? And how many folks do you believe are actively contributing to the Strengths Development mission?
Well, I'm so glad I went back and looked at my notes this morning. I can tell you, as of a conference that we did this summer, at that point in time, we had about 490 staff, a few faculty as a part of that, who had attended an educator session on our campus. In addition to that, we've had about 90 people also attend the MAP session. So we have quite a breadth of folks that have a good amount of strengths training under their belt.
Okay, and as we get into this next layer, I'm going to ask my colleagues here to generate any questions they have and just pass those forward to me. So stay tuned for some more questions. But tell me about the measurement model you guys have built around strengths development at the University of Minnesota.
Honestly, I think the fact that we were very intentional around doing assessment work with this initiative has been one of the reasons that it's been successful. We knew that with a 3-year pilot, both at interim points between year 1 and 3 and at the end of year 3, we were going to need to be able to provide information about what we were doing and how it was creating an impact. And so we worked very closely with some folks from Gallup in the initial planning of to really help us walk through what are our goals for this initiative, what kind of impact do we hope it makes, and how are we going to be able to measure that. And so we created a kind of a research assessment model right in the very beginning that took into account what our overarching goals were, what are some of the assessment tools we can use to get at those goals, do they already exist or do they not already exist, and if they don't, what do we need to create? And so we went into that process, I think, intentionally, and we did that in partnership with our. So we also have a Strengths Advisory Board on our campus that consists of about 20+ different folks from across campus, and we wanted to make sure that that assessment plan met the larger goals of our institution and fed into some of those larger goals, also fed into helping to support our student learning and development outcomes that we have on our campus, and then would also provide good information around the assessment of our initiative itself.
So let's get down to
and that impact model and the assessment research is on our website as well.
Let's get down to some numbers. What are some numbers that you're excited about in terms of strengths development and how it's working on campus? And also tell us a little bit about the story of recruitment and retention on campus. Not that strengths is the only hammer working on that, but how are your numbers looking across campus in terms of students?
We have done about 2 years of work looking at the retention of our students as well as connecting GPA as well, and so looking at the numbers of, again, we can't look at causal relationships between strengths and these things, but there are definite correlations that we're finding. And what we've found so far is that there are positive correlations between even down to if students have taken Strengths Finder and whether a retention rate, their GPA, things like that. And so we're really trying to look at finding kind of a pathway for how does strengths fit into all this. And so again, not causal relationship, but there are definite correlations that we're finding between some of the key metrics for our campus overall, as well as, again, connecting back to some of our student learning and development outcomes.
And what about your recruitment and your retention numbers? Tell me that story. So if I go to whitehouse.gov today, what's the story of the University of Minnesota?
Our retention numbers are pretty good. Our first year retention is up in the 90% range and up from that. So we are, we're doing pretty well with our first year retention, and what we're also looking at now that we're into 3 years is looking at, the first cohort that we had, what is their retention from sophomore to junior year, so we can look at that in a longitudinal sense as well. For all 3 of those cohorts that have been a part of our pilot program. The pilot won't extend to when that first cohort is graduating, so we won't have the graduation rate assessment as a part of the pilot, but as we move forward, we'll certainly start to look at how those things fit into the picture as well.
Mm-hmm. And Robin, I would piggyback that question by asking, how has your research and your results changed or impacted the way that leaders on campus or executives that are in strategy think about strengths and what you're doing with it?
Well, I think, having data to support things is always important. And so we have been able to, to take that and provide some initial feedback around the types of impact that we're feeling that it has. Everything, related again to sense of belonging on campus, to how students are getting engaged. There's a clear relationship between the number of interactions that students are having around strengths, and how the results are coming out in terms of things like sense of belonging and so forth. And so that interaction piece is critical, kind of looping back, Shane, to what you asked earlier about the difference between just taking Strengths Finder and then actually having those interactions around it. So that's another key piece. And so we've been able to take that information and talk to some of our campus leaders about it. We're in the midst right now of putting together a comprehensive report for President Kaler that really takes into account the first 2 years of the pilot as we make a decision of how to move forward.
We have a lot of different universities. Some are trying to make this big jump to the kind of work that Minnesota is doing. How are different schools paying for this initiative? Is it baked into student fees? Is it paid through a larger student affairs initiative? Is it coming out of a different university budget, foundations, or all of the above?
All of the above, absolutely, and we see everything. I think by far the easiest route is if you can secure a donor or someone who's just extremely supportive of what you're doing, and you don't have to worry about it for a set period of time, and you just get to go do good work with students. But we certainly have models of a student activities fee, where you're basically including it in the fees and adding that value back to the student experience. And then we have a lot where for years and years different departments within a university have been funding some small part of this, and our big job is to come in and say, hey, look, you're already doing XYZ in all these different pockets. You'd have such a much more efficient use of resources if you all came together, and so it's funded by different departments at the same time.
Yeah, so it's not an easy story to say, folks are going and dipping into this pot of money, and that's how it's happening across campus. It's different on every campus.
That's right.
So one quick story, I was working with a school district recently, and they wanted to bring strengths to all of their students, and I said, well, you have this business in town that does strengths with all their employees. Maybe you could call them and see if they'd be willing to support you in your effort. The principal then called the CEO of that company and said, I'd love to bring strengths to all my students. The CEO funded that through a foundation that the business had. So there are lots of different models, and there's no cookie cutter way to answer that. Tell me about...
yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think sometimes with, in Minnesota's case, there were so many different efforts that we're getting at a strengths type of goal, but we're taking different pathways. And so if you're using, different personality assessments and all these different models and all these different ways of approaching engagement of students, you're probably spending a lot of unnecessary money doing so. And so sometimes it's just about having the hard conversation and getting people on the same page about one approach and getting some developmental clarity on what you want to do.
Okay. And there are a couple of questions that I'm going to weave into a series of questions here. Students only take Strengths Quest one time during their time at Minnesota, right? So they're not going to take it after the freshman year experience. They're not going to take it at the Career Center. Those top 5 kind of move with them forever?
Based on our initiative, we provide them with one code prior to them coming in. Could they take it again if they wanted to on their own? Certainly they could do that, but they would need to fund that by themselves, as well as we don't encourage that to happen in terms of you should take this your junior year as you're exiting. We provide that as their experience coming in, and then really work with those top 5 throughout their undergraduate experience to then link it to things like engagement and career and major exploration and all the key points, building relationships, all the things that are important to a student's holistic experience as an undergraduate. I think one of the unique things that we've been able to do on our campus that has been helpful is that we have a system that is available to our career counselors and our academic advisors, and we feed the students' top 5 into that system so that prior to an advising appointment or a career counseling appointment, people can go into that system, reference what a student's top 5 is, and then use that appropriately within the context of an appointment.
So how do you distribute codes prior to students landing at Minnesota, so that if some eager student on day 5 of freshman year wants to go to Windy for career counseling, she already has the upload of their top 5? How do you distribute codes early on? And then how do you message over time to get students really involved in this strengths effort? What's the marketing behind this?
I think that's one of the key things on our campus, and in terms of partnerships. We've partnered with our orientation and first year programs office. They do clearly a ton of marketing and communications with our incoming students. And so instead of us adding to additional communications, we have worked through them and with them to integrate that code disbursement into all the communications that they're already getting. So it's woven into our Welcome Week selection process. And I won't go into detail about that, but it's woven into the Welcome Week event selection process, so that as a part of a process that students are already taking part in, they receive their code. And then we work with orientation and first year programs to provide information. What is Strengths Finder? Why are they taking it? How is it going to impact them? What kinds of things can they potentially expect from it here? And then we work with them from the time that a student, really from orientation time, just in terms of raising awareness about this is something that you will do at the University of Minnesota. We then work with them through that entire Welcome Week process. We work with housing and residential life as well, so that we communicate back and forth with orientation and first year programs and housing and residential life to keep them aware of who has and hasn't taken it yet, so that they can help to kind of try and identify those last students who may not have taken it, and do some, direct talking with or marketing to them to try and do a last push before, right as they get on campus. And then after that, it's really kind of a shared process on our campus, because colleges may be communicating directly with some of their students about opportunities that they have available. From a centralized office, the Office for Student Engagement then kind of takes over with just general resources that are available to students. So they may hear about our Strengths and Engagement coaching program, workshops and activities. We have a Strengths website built that staff, faculty, and students can use. So we do the 34 and 34. And that goes out on a weekly basis. It gets pushed out to our student portal. So lots of different ways and means that students can receive communications. It depends on how they're involved in the university, because it could come through Greek life, it could come through housing and residential life, it could come through student unions and activities. So it really depends on how the student is engaging in the university. That has a lot of impact on what kind of information they will receive about strengths as well.
And that's very helpful. And just to be clear, is it orientation that is distributing the actual codes, or is it your office as student engagement director? Who's distributing the actual codes?
We house the actual codes in my office. We integrate that code into a document that orientation and first year program sends out to students. So it's a true partnership.
Gotcha.
And we upload those codes into a database that orientation and first year programs has.
And how do you think the career center's using this strengths information, and has it influenced the work that they're doing at the career development office?
I think it's been great. I actually have a couple. I got a great email from one of our career directors actually this morning, and not every career center uses it across the board. So we have some career counselors that use it. We have other career counselors that don't as actively use it. But those that are using it have some really great stories to tell. I'm going to look down for a second because I'm just going to reference some of my notes from especially this morning. Mm-hmm. A couple of them use it in their classes. A lot of our career centers offer classes to students. It may be an internship class. It might be a major in career exploration class. It might be a career planning class. Oftentimes they're integrated into those classes for students. One of the internship classes that our St. Paul Career and Internship Center does is they interact with those students in the internship. They do an internship reflection as a part of that class. But I think one of the unique things they also do is that they provide the supervisors and mentors that are involved in that class the option to take Strengths Finder as well. so that they can then try and integrate some of those conversations into the student's experience within the internship. So that's just, that's one example. Individual appointments as well. Career counselors often integrate those into the one-to-one appointments, whether it be talking about career and major exploration, whether it be talking about how to do interview and articulate your strengths to a potential employer, grad school applications, resumes, networking. We also last year and this year, for the last 2 years, we'll have a strengths coaching table available at our job and internship fair. That will be staffed by people from my office as well as potentially some volunteer career coaches and counselors from across campus, so that before students go into the big room to talk to all those employers, they can stop by our table and just get, even if it's just a quick sort of confidence boost about their top 5 again, or revisiting how they can articulate their top 5 in a brief conversation. So we also have services like that available related to career as well.
I love the practical nature of that. So before you go in and talk to an employer, we're going to give you a booster shot, just to help you kind of put your story together. That's beautiful. Let's get real technical one more time. Give me an overview of how student strengths are sent to career and advising. So how does this information magically travel to the right people? Oh,
if it were only magic, that would be awesome. It's not as magical as what we'd like it to be. So we have called A+, and it's a system that is available to advisors and career counselors that documents a lot about students' advising appointments, notes, their classes, etc. And so what we did 2 years ago is we worked to be able to get sort of an input pathway into that system where we could upload the top 5 of those students who have taken strengths. And so when you open up A+ as an advisor or career counselor, you'll see the student's picture, you'll see some of the basic information about them, and one of the things you'll see on that front page are 5 abbreviations for the student's top 5. And then when you hover above those abbreviations, the short definition of that talent theme will pop up.
And let's get it a little broader here. So you guys have had this big partnership for a while, and 490 faculty and staff members are trained. Both of you, what do you see as the benefits of having that many strengths trained faculty and staff members on one campus? What's working to make students' lives better because of those folks being trained?
I'm going to default to Kate talking a lot.
Oh gosh, I think it goes back to having, everyone's working towards one common purpose, and at a campus like University of Minnesota that's so decentralized, there aren't that many things that bring everyone together to the same table, other than, everyone wants to help students, and that's very general. But when you have so many different departments and focuses and areas of expertise represented, there's just a lot of innovation happening about specifically how are you going to apply strengths. So we don't want University of Minnesota, and we've avoided it so far, becoming a campus where you walk around and the only conversation you're having is, what's your top 5? Oh, that's really cool. That matches one of mine. That's not a deep or helpful conversation. So we want Res Life to be doing what they have been, which is this really cool well-being application. They've really dove into our well-being constructs, and we want orientation to have a really specific way that they apply strengths. So I think there's just a great diversity of perspectives and ideas of how you apply strengths very specifically to whatever discipline or area you're working in.
I think to piggyback on that, what it's afforded us is that students have a greater breadth of interactions that they could have on our campus. Again, we're decentralized, so no student's going to have the same experience. But what it's allowed us to do is create, what Katie said, some unique opportunities for them to interact with strengths in ways that they probably wouldn't connect on their own or think about. I'd like to just highlight 2 examples that come to mind right now. One of them is in our Smart Learning Commons, which is our peer-to-peer tutoring program. they have done a really great job of building it into the work that they do with the actual peers who tutor other students. They have weekly staff meetings, and so they have integrated some of the strength stuff into those. They have the peer tutors do reflections around their strengths, and those have included everything from how you apply your strengths in terms of tutoring to how are you applying strengths in terms of your own classes to be successful. They put those out there on a Moodle site. Other peers then can react and reflect on those answers. And I was sent just a whole huge Word document that had all these examples in there. And the richness of the happening between the students was amazing. I mean, it was just the support they were giving each other around their strengths, the discussion, the questions that they posed were just really, really amazing and deep. And so that's one example. And then another one is we created a partnership with the Rothenberger Institute on our campus, and they have a whole series of different online courses that students can take, one of them being Success Over Stress. And they decided to integrate strengths as a part of that class, and this is their second year doing it now. And it's been a great way. Students will get a strengths overview in the class, but then they dive a little bit deeper into the actual application piece of it. And so they've talked about describe a recent challenge that you faced and how you handled it. Explain how you've used two of your talent themes to help with that, or you could use two of your talent themes to help with a similar situation in the future. So they're tying it to stress. And that's not an application that students originally would have think about in terms of how can I apply my top five. And in the pre and the post survey that they've done within that class, the impact of that has become, very clear.
And I want to wrap up because I want to respect you guys needing to move on to other things. So I have a great question, series of questions from Wendy, and then you're going to have 15 seconds each to say, here's what a campus needs to do to better develop student strengths. All right, so start thinking about that. But first, answer this. What happens to a student and a code if a student chooses not to take strengths? So freshman shows up, they've been peppered with opportunities and reminders to take strengths, they decide not to do it. What are the ramifications for that student? What happens with the code?
There aren't really ramifications for the student. We're not going to put a hold on their record or not allow them to graduate or anything like that. But for our incoming first-year students, we give them that year to be able to take it. They will get reminders as the year goes on that they haven't taken it yet. If they choose not to take it by that final date, we do kind of pull that code, and then we let them know that it's been deactivated so that they no longer have access to it. And if they do at some point later in their education to go back and take it, then they need to find a different way to take it, and we'll help them with that. But at that point, it would either be at their own cost, or it would be potentially through their career center if their career center sponsors it.
Okay. And what all this communication, is the bulk of it happening with the student? Is it happening via mail? Am I sending them a code via a letter, email, a text, a Snapchat? What the hell is happening here?
And are you talking about the original code, or are you talking about those subsequent reminders?
Original code.
The original code they receive, again, in that document that comes from orientation and first-year programs regarding Welcome Week selection process. So it's a giant PDF that they receive via email that walks them through the process of things that they need to select regarding our Welcome Week process, and the code is embedded within that process.
All right, give us your 15 seconds on.
15 minutes. Don't say that to someone with communication.
The one thing we can do to do a better job of developing student strengths.
Do you want to give me? I will. Okay.
I would say know what you're doing with this, know what you're trying to accomplish, communicate it really well, and then allow people to get excited. Don't chase down people who aren't. Allow people to get excited and creative and do even better work with students, and the results will be amazing.
So know your outcome, market and message well, and get some real good developmental experiences in front of students. Okay.
Yep.
Robin?
I would echo everything that Katie just said. The takeaways that we usually highlight in our conference presentations are establish and communicate the why, the how, the what, or not just the what. You can provide the training and information, but you can't provide the attitude. So find those advocates and those people that are excited or have the potential to be excited. Create partnerships for intentional touch points. Empower and excite others. Set and work towards realistic expectations. And then I think that assessment piece. That really helps you walk through the how, the why, and not just the what, in addition to making sure that you've got data to support what you're doing.
Wonderful. I want to. Katie, go ahead.
I will just add, don't forget leadership at your school. I think University of Minnesota has done a great job. Robin and others like Robin at elevating their story internally as well as out to students and families, and that's been a huge part of their success. Very connected and embedded in what the university is trying to accomplish at a very high level strategy.
And involve students. I guess that's my last point too, is involve students, whether they're coaches or helping you plan the initiative. They have so much excitement oftentimes, and in terms of leadership will often listen to students before they'll listen to staff sometimes. So if you can kind of get them on board in important and critical ways, it's not only a great development opportunity for them, but it's a great way to boost the success of a program.
Right.
Well, having visited the campus, but the Twin Cities in general, I know that people outside the university are talking about the Strengths Initiative on campus. So you've done a beautiful job of creating this ripple across Minneapolis and St. Paul and across the state. I want to thank Katie Lyon for joining us from Gallup, Minneapolis, and I want to thank Robin Stubblefield for coming over from the U and visiting with us at our Gallup offices. I want to thank Wendy for hosting us here at the University Career Center. And Jim, how can we watch this again if we just need to learn more?
Yeah, we'll make it available both video and audio, downloadable audio as well, if folks want to download this and take it on their smartphone, maybe listen to it on the car. Those will all be available on our site. If you go to coaching.gallup.com, or if you want to watch the video, you can head out to the Strengths Center YouTube page. Just go to YouTube and search Gallup Strengths Center. And if all your resources actually are available at the Strengths Center, just go to Gallup Strengths Center, all one word, gallupstrengthscenter.com, and more information about that. We'll make this available to everyone out there who wants to listen to it and get it available to them. For both Minneapolis and for KU, we want to say thanks for coming out and listening. We had a bunch of live viewers as well, so thanks for doing that. And we want to thank everybody for coming out today and being a part of this. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.